Welcome to episode number 112 of Broad Street Hustle. I'm your host, Jason Sayeda, and tonight we're going to recap the past week's U.S. Open. We're going to give a few comments about the Celtics winning the championship pretty decisively, a few NBA free agency Sixers thoughts, and provide a Phillies update. That's in no particular order, but this episode is sponsored by Giovannina's Pizza. You tried the rest, now try the best, Giovannina's. And let's get to our panel. Tommy can't make it tonight, but we are joined by our other hosts. The first is Jimmy the Chalk. What's up, Jim?
Glad to be back.
Great. And then the other one is Chris Meeker. Go on, Meeker.
Well, I haven't had the Giovannina's pizza. I gotta try it.
It's really good.
See what the hype's about.
You got to try it. They're paying for it. All right, so I guess we'll start with the Phillies. So they're 49-25. They had the second best record in baseball. Not technically yet, but they're going to be tied with the Yankees for least amount of losses. The Yankees are getting pounded by the Orioles as we speak, so pretty soon they'll have 25 losses also. But the Yankees, I believe, have played 2 or 3 more games than the Phillies. So the Phillies are 7 games up on the Braves currently. They hit a little rough patch. They're 4-6 in their last 10. But they're still, impressive record, 29-11 at home, 20-14 on the road. So I'll throw it to Chalky. Chalky, what are your thoughts on what's going on with the Phillies? Any concerns right now?
Overall, not necessarily. My concern is that since the last time we talked Phillies, obviously JT went on the IL, and what's his long-term prognosis? Is he's going to be out for 4 to 6 at least, was it? Or
he seems to be healing pretty fast. So I'm going to lean more towards 4.
Yeah, possibly. But considering the position he plays, it's not something I would rush back earlier than necessary. Now, you mentioned the last 10, and they've obviously played some better teams than typical. Their schedule is what it is, but they had 3 games against Baltimore, 3 games against Boston, took 1 of 3 in each of those. And then they just beat San Diego 2 out of 3. My concern immediately with JT going down is we've seen some of their better pitchers have some pretty bad outings. And I don't know if, I think Wheeler gave up, 4 home runs in a row or something the other day or something
he was
crazy.
Awful night.
I mean, they have bad games that, but it's like, Nola had been pitching well, Wheeler pitching well, and all of a sudden JT goes down, and now they have some of their worst games of the year. Coincidence? Maybe they're due for a bad outing, but I don't know if being behind the plate, he obviously calls a good game. He's still a Gold Glove catcher. That almost cost him the game Friday night against Baltimore when Mercon or whatever couldn't get the play in time, let the ball go by. And then you've had 2 blown saves at least since he went down, right? So my concerns are a little greater with the pitching staff now than they were before. But as they looked at the deadline, you need you still need that closer we're looking at, and it sounds like Miller is on their radar, which is something that I know, obviously, I think all of us will like. But it sounds like they're looking for a permanent starter in the outfield now. And I mean, they're like still the 5th best team as far as average, but their outfield with Rojas down now, is they were hitting 220 on average. Castellanos getting hot, so it's still a closer and it's still an outfielder, but you might need 2 outfielders now, and you just hope to weather the storm with the rest of the staff while JT heals up.
How about you, Meeker?
They just seem to every year, even when they are a competitive team, when they go out and play those AL East teams, they always seem to have trouble, on the road. It seems like. I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't run. I can't prove it to you, but I seem to remember them losing even in the 07 to 11 years when they go on the road to play American League teams. And I don't know the reason for that. With respect to the pitching, I mean, we're going now into the hotter months of the year. The ball is carrying a little more than it was earlier in the year. I think it favors hitters. in this time of year. I think, what we saw in the first 2 months all around Major League Baseball was that pitching was dominating. And now it seems like hitting is starting to catch up, lately. So do I have a concern? No. I mean, I think, you can't go the whole year with your starters giving up 1 or 2 runs every single start. It just happened to be, in a 7-game span where you had some of your starters get knocked around a little bit. But you get Trey back, which is great. You get Marsh back, which helps the offense. I think, with respect to JT, like you said, Chalky, if he's going to come back from this injury early, I don't see him catching. So one of the things I have a problem with, is that the Phillies lose a lot of games by beating themselves defensively. We've seen that recently as well. Yesterday being a good example. And if you're going to want JT in the lineup and he's not ready to catch, you're going to have to DH him, which basically means Schwarber's got to shift to left field because you're not going to take him out of the lineup, and Marsh has got to play center field. I don't think Brandon Marsh is a good center fielder. We all know Kyle Schwarber is not a good left fielder. Catching, I'd rather have JT back there because his familiarity with the staff, and he's just, an all-world catcher, but I don't think they lose too much defensively. But I think that, the one thing I have a concern about, if you're asking me if I have a concern, it's the defense. It's the defense for me because in playoff games, you can't beat yourself. I don't care if your pitcher gets knocked around, gives up 3 home runs, and he's going to have a bad outing, they lose a game. But I don't like losing games when your defense loses games for you. I've seen them do that more than a handful of times this year in games that they could have won if their defense played better. And, that's my biggest concern. Will they go out there and get an outfielder? Probably. I think they're going to come up with some sort of trade, whether it's Robert or one of these guys that are on their radar in the outfield. And that would be good if they did, to help the lineup. And they have to improve defensively. And now that Sosa is no longer playing shortstop, you have Trey playing shortstop coming off a hamstring. I wonder, how that's going to look also at shortstop, because we all think Trey is like an average at best shortstop.
Yeah, let me stop you right there because
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about the defense also. And we were texting back and forth yesterday, but they're still not a good defensive team, right? They're just not good. I mean, Stott's a good second baseman and JT's a good catcher, but other than that, I mean, I guess when Marsh is in left field, he's fine, and then when Rojas is in center or Pache, they're fine. But Castellanos is average at best. Bohm, right, is below average if you ask me. I mean, he is taking a step back defensively this year.
He has as many errors right now in this point in the season as he had all year last year.
Yeah, he turned into a butcher again at third base. Trey, I'm not crazy about his defense at shortstop. I think he's average at best. I'm starting to think Harper's slightly below average at first base. No better than average. So, I agree. I think that's a problem, but I think they're going to make a move to fix that. Which I guess will lead me to my second.
Just real quick before you go off that point, Jay.
Yeah.
I think you gave Rojas too much credit, because I think if he was as good as you just said he was, he wouldn't have got sent down. He was not anything. He was barely average at best defensively this year, which is why he got sent back down, because there's now he's not offsetting the bat with his glove. So
Right.
I don't disagree with that. I think there's a lot of hype with him defensively, and he just is he better than average? I think he's better than average, but he's not this defensive wizard that they
no,
claim.
he wasn't playing that way. He might be that talented for sure, but
Yeah.
he wasn't playing that way.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you want to point to any kind of specific situation, you look at yesterday. Does he get that ball? If he's playing center field and Marsh is not playing center field. Now, Marsh made a bad play on that ball. He should have laid up on it, just let 1 run score instead of 3. But that's if you're going to play Marsh in center field versus a Rojas, who we may think is not as good as the Phillies think, right? that's a play in a game that can happen in a really bad spot in the playoffs where it costs you a win. And that's my biggest concern with the Phils right now is just how they play defensively and lose games because of it.
See,
And
I
go ahead.
yeah, I agree with that, but it's almost not a talent thing, right? And I think talent wise, Rojas may get to that ball, but baseball IQ wise, right? Marsh, if you're not getting to that ball, it can't get by you, right? And I don't see Rojas as being a high IQ baseball player either. Like he's the type of guy that would have did the same thing Marsh did. Now maybe he would have got to it, but there's those two guys to me are the two least lowest baseball IQ guys on the team. I just see them making bonehead plays out there that can't be made. But so I think that plays a part in it too. We're like, if you're not going to get to that ball, there's no way it could get by you. You got to keep it in front of you.
Yeah. Their pitching has been outstanding. Their lineup they can bash teams like the '08 teams did, the '08, '09, '10 teams. They can bash teams and win by 5, 6 runs. Their run differential on their wins is the best in baseball right now, I think. But defensively, in playoff games where you're playing teams that have other good pitchers, where games are going to be close, and we saw that, against Baltimore, Boston, I wouldn't call Boston staff, great or anything like that, but you're going to face good teams, the Dodgers, the Braves, so forth, the good pitching staffs. You just can't have these mistakes. And that's my biggest concern for them right now. Well, who did you think that they were going to get to address it? You mentioned that a second ago, so I want to hear what your
Yeah,
thoughts are on that.
that's going to be my next point anyway. I wanted to get into the trade deadline thoughts. I know Chalky threw out a couple of things that he would like to see them look at, but I guess we could start with you then, Meeker. What do you want to see them do at the trade deadline? And be realistic. Like obviously, we want them to go out and get five
Yeah, I
different
mean,
things, and it's not going to happen. So what do you think they're going to do?
if I'm, I think, with respect to whether you want the outfielder or whether you want the reliever, and you're not going to make both trades. If you're asking me what I would rather have, I think I would rather have the outfielder. The outfielder that not only plays good defense, and if we're talking center field, not only plays good defense, but also provides non-out, hitting in the ninth spot or whatever. So a guy like Robert, I think you can get away maybe with this relief staff, even though I'm not confident in it. I mean, I'd rather have the outfielder, and he's my choice. That's the guy that I would want. I don't know how much it's going to cost you and what prospects they're going to have to give up quite yet, but that's the trade I would make more than the reliever. Sure, I would love to have a closer. The A's closer, his name's escaping me right now.
Mason Miller.
Miller, sorry. I'd love to have that, but I think I'd rather have the outfielder because I think we need more pop in that outfield. We just don't have enough of it.
So I somewhat disagree with you. Not totally, but I somewhat disagree. But I'll let Chalky give his point first. Go ahead, Chalky.
Well, I guess I don't necessarily agree that you can't have both. Now, are you going to get the best outfielder and the best reliever on the market?
That's
maybe
my point.
not.
That's my point. But go ahead.
I think they have to be thinking about pushing as many of the chips on the table as you can right now. And if there's a way, and again, I don't know if they have the prospects or whatever to get both, say, Miller and Robert, whatever. But if there was a way, they're both young. They're still in their 20s. So, they're not 2-year guys, but your window is open now. And I have said it again and again. To me, there's nobody. If you want to say Crawford, okay, but there's nobody that's untouchable in the minors for me, especially the pitchers. There just isn't. I'm sorry, and that includes Painter. So if you can get a stud closer and a decent enough outfielder, so Miller and Lane Thomas isn't going to cost you the same that Miller and Robert would, but I think if you can somehow nail both of them, you're back to being, you talked about as best team in the league. And I think you need to get something for the bullpen because knowing the way Topper likes to move guys around, if you can have that one lockdown guy, that now frees up whoever else to be, he'll throw guys in the 6th, 7th, 8th inning just for matchups, and he gives you that extra arm, and you can get rid of Soto or somebody like that who you don't really want to have to use. So I don't think you can go cheap on the relief pitchers. So I think you got to look at Miller, maybe Scott from Miami, but I think it's got to be one of those two guys, unless there's a name that comes available that we're not thinking of.
Let me ask you a question. If they get a Tanner Scott, are you moving him straight into the closer role,
Yes.
or are you still playing the same type
They don't
of
have.
matchup?
They do not have a closer right now.
I think that the reason why I'm saying they really, I don't think you can neglect. Put it this way, if you put a gun to my head, say you can only pick one position, yes, I'll pick outfielder because the bullpen might be good enough and they might score enough runs. But to me, having that guy in the 9th inning, that's just going to be your 9th inning guy, and then you can do whatever you want with Alvarado, with Hoffman, with Dominguez if he keeps it up, with Kerkering, with Strahm, who could do anything. Now you got 5 guys you can slide in and out. Because we get to the Suarez Ranger is Cy Young candidate right now. Is Topper all of a sudden going to let him pitch 7, 8 innings in the playoffs? Because he hasn't before. Does that change his philosophy, or is he still going to be like, you know what? Second time through the lineup, playoffs, you're out. Well, then you better have somebody at the back end so you can juggle those other guys around. So if that's going to be his philosophy, I think you need to get the anchor at the end of the bullpen, along with whatever you get in the outfield.
Yeah.
I'm only saying that if you're going to go get the bullpen piece, I want someone, and you're going to slot him into a closer role, like that is going to be his role, then you want someone that has a good amount of, other than Mason Miller, because he's just young and he hasn't been in the league that long, but someone who has had experience in the playoffs as a closer. There's a couple teams out there that are going to want that guy too. Baltimore being another one.
Yankee.
So we're going to, it's not like the Phillies can just go pick whoever they want, and a team like Baltimore has got a lot more to offer for that than the Phillies will. So you may have to settle for something like what Arizona did last year with Seawald. It's going to be a very similar situation with the Phils. I don't know that you slot him in as, the permanent closer. You might still play these matchup games that Topper likes to play, and even have Hoffman pitch a 9th inning, depending on who's coming up in the lineup, especially if he's a left-handed pitcher, that you're getting in this trade. But I don't know. I don't know how available these guys that you're talking about are going to be, but we'll see. But yeah, if you go cheaper on the outfielder so that you could still have enough prospect to get the closer, then sure, I'm in.
That's what I want to do. Like I think you're shooting too high for the outfielder. Like I think I keep mentioning this guy's name, but I think Tom Pham, Bader, although the Mets are playing better now, like a guy like that is what you're looking at getting for the outfield, right? And then I think they needed a closer. Like right now, to me, they don't. I love Hoffman. I like Alvarado. I love Strahm. I just don't like them as closers. Kerkering, I think, eventually is going to be your closer. I don't know if he's ready yet. I would try him though. So I would start from now and try him in late game situations. He was a little shaky in that Baltimore game, but Marchand should have caught that one pitch, right? I don't know if they called it a pass ball or a wild pitch, but he should have caught it. So, technically, he hit the one guy.
He didn't. I don't think they gave Kerkering an earned run, so that would be a pass ball, I guess.
Probably a pass
the
ball.
Catcher, yeah.
He should have caught it, right? And then, so I don't know how shaky he was in that situation because he looked pretty dominant with a couple of those hitters. Now the problem I have with what you said, Chalky, I agree with a lot of what you said, but like I'm hearing lately that this Aiden Miller. I heard one scout say that he's the best prospect the Phillies have had since Mike Schmidt.
Yes, I'll give you that. He wasn't running through my mind when I was going through, but let's say him and Crawford would be maybe the two untouchables.
So I'm actually thinking down the road, and here's what I wanted to ask you guys. So Schwarber has one more year left, right? Next year is his last year. Castellanos has 2 years left. So their top 4 prospects are obviously Painter, who I don't think any of us really want to trade. Then you have...
I'm sorry, I don't want to, but I have no reservations trading him for the right deal.
Then you have Ada Miller. So Painter's ranked 18th in the prospect list of Major League Baseball. Ada Miller's already moved up to 47, and he's still in Single A. So, and he's a third baseman. Then you have Abel, who's 60th, and Crawford 62nd. So, I mean, realistically, the team, the nucleus is still young enough that in 2 years, when I think they'll all be ready in 2 years. I think Abel's the one they're going to look to trade, and then there's another second baseman, Haba or something like that. The guy's name is, and he's a top 100 prospect. So maybe you look to trade Abel and that guy, and you hold on to these three guys, because I don't think they're going to re-sign Schwarber, right? So now, in 2 years, Aiden Miller's probably ready to come up and play. So he's going to play third base, and Vroom's going to move to first, and Harper's going to be the DH, I think, at that point, right? So Schwarber's going to be gone. Crawford, they have an issue in center field right now. Like, to me, I think Marsh is proven he's not an everyday player. He's a fine platoon player, but he's not every day. Maybe Crawford's your center fielder, and obviously, Painter, your staff is still young enough where, like, Walker, at some point, he's going to go. Like, you get rid of Walker and you slide Painter in, and you got 5 somewhat. I mean, Wheeler's getting up there, and Nola's obviously getting up there, but, like, Ranger's young and Sanchez is young, and you'd have Painter. So I don't know if they're going to trade these guys. So I don't know if you're going to get one of these big names out there at the trade deadline, because I don't think they're trading Miller or Painter. I think they might trade Crawford. I think they'll definitely look to trade Abel, and they. That middle infielder, Stott and Turner are young enough. You're not going to need that guy. So,
well, I wouldn't trade for a guy that's a rental. So a trade for, like, Mason Miller is not a rental. Robert would not be a rental. So these guys.
So then, are you okay giving up like an Aiden Miller for Robert or Robert, whatever his name is?
The one guy I don't want to trade is Painter, only because I know he's going to be. He can be on the staff for the next 5 or 10 years, So that's the one guy I don't want to trade. I mean, the rest of the guys that you mentioned, because you're trading for a guy, like, say, for the outfielder who can be with the team for the next 3 or 4 years. I know the guy's only a Single A, so he's probably 2 years away, at least, then, yeah, I think I'm okay with it. I mean, if I'm trading those guys for a guy that's going to play for 2 months and then he's gone, no, I probably wouldn't do that. It's not worth it. They got to be smart, with their future, because, like you said, their nucleus all around the field is fairly either under contract for a while or young.
Yeah.
So Bohm, Stott, not Marsh per se, but,
I guess JT's going to be getting old soon, like, for a catcher. Yeah. So that might eventually be an issue. But
yeah, Bohm, Stott, Ranger, Sanchez. These guys, and we just signed Wheeler for whatever, 4 years, 5 years, and Nola for the next 5 years. I mean, they have everyone under contract to grow, whoever they're going to trade for, is to grow with the team, rather than, because you're going to have to replace guys that are getting old, which the 08 team didn't do.
Right.
And then by the time 11, 12 rolled around, you go into 10 years of doldrums. We don't want that to happen. So Dombrowski's smart. I think he understands that. I know he wants to win. But I just don't think that they're going to mortgage the future just for a rental player. Give me a player that's going to grow with the team, I'm fine with it.
I agree with that. I mean, if you're going to give up one of those top guys, so let's say Crawford, Painter, whoever else you want to throw in there, it's got to be for a guy that potentially, who's I would say is young enough that, contracts aside, can give you 5 years to keep that window going. You can't give, unless the best player who's going to be a free agent next year is on a team and they say, okay, well, he's hit 50 home runs so far, give us your best prospect and he's going to win you a World Series. Okay. But those players aren't going to be available.
Yeah.
So what other guy I forgot to mention who's...
I had any more of those players, to be honest with you.
No, there aren't. The one name I also forgot to mention, so if you want to go package deal with Miami, because they're trading everybody, Chisholm, he's 26. He's had health issues, but he's got pop in the bat. And if you can get him and Scott, his attitude is a problem too, but this might be a better I mean, Miami's the Wild West. Like, who's running the show down there? Let's be honest. Maybe now he could be a problem, but maybe there's a lot more clubhouse leadership up here in Philly. Maybe they could straighten him out a little bit. But
So are you okay giving up Aiden Miller, Abel, and Kirkring for those few guys?
2 of them? We're
We-
getting
we-
Scott and Chisholm?
for
Yeah.
Scott and Chisholm,
For Scott and Chisholm.
I'm gonna be honest. Kirkring is the holdup for me. The prospects, no, but I want to. If I'm swapping somebody in the bullpen, I don't want to lose Kirkring. And for Scott, that might be, I don't know. I'd have to think on that because I like Kirkring a lot. And he's,
I do too,
um,
but I think they're going to look and say, well, this year Scott's probably a better option than Kirkring. Now, in a year or two, that might look really bad. But
Yeah, I mean, to me, if you're going to do that, you need another bullpen move lined up to upgrade from Soto because I don't want him getting the ball in the playoffs. So if you're okay, Scott's an upgrade over Kirkring, let's say, but Soto is a downgrade from Kirkring. Who's a guy that you can get that will be an upgrade over Soto? And then it's actually no. Go ahead.
Spencer Turnbull's contract situation.
I think they signed him for 1 year, I believe, right?
All right, so
Short term.
he's not worth trading because of that reason. But like a team might see him as like, oh, let me slot. I mean, the Phillies can't slot him in as a starter. Other teams obviously look at him and say, well, yeah, this guy would
Hey,
look
he
good.
could be a chip. I just think he's valuable to the Phillies because you said it before. Like if they get an injury, you just slide him right into the rotation, right?
Yeah, he's
Unless you're
insurance.
thinking about doing that with Abel, but we're talking about trading Abel. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting. The problem with having great prospects is everybody wants them. Everybody's going to if I guarantee if they're going to Oakland and want Mason Miller, they're going to want Kirkring. Florida's going to Miami, whatever their name is going to want Kirkring. They're all going to want Kirkring. They're all going to want Aiden Miller. They're obviously going to want Painter. The Phillies probably going to say no to Miller and Painter, but I think Crawford could get traded. Abel, like I said, that other prospect, and hopefully not Kirkring, but I think
No.
they're going to want him.
Kirkring in a Miller trade, depending on what else they have to give up, I'm more willing to entertain than Scott, even if it's part of a package that brings Jazz here.
Yeah. All right, let's transition off of the Phillies. I guess we'll talk briefly about the NBA Finals. Meeker wants to talk about it because he picked a minus 180 favorite to win, and he's all happy. What he fails to remember, though, is when we had the draft and he had the first pick, he took the Milwaukee Bucks, and I had the second pick and took the Celtics. And now he owes me a dinner because the Celtics won the championship. But go ahead, Meeker. You want to talk about the Celtics winning the final?
I mean, it was a sleeper of a series. I mean, the only thing I really want to say is, I look back at some of the things we talked about when we previewed the finals, and it really did come down to the fact that Jaylen Brown and Tatum kind of erased the production of Kyrie and Luka. And Kyrie did not have a good series. I guess karma's a bitch when it comes to that. But the complementary players and the depth of the Celtics was the reason why they won this series. Mainly defensively. I said that they were a really good defensive team. Everyone wants to talk about their offense, but I think the bigger thing with the Celtics was that they're a really good defensive team. The question I would want to ask you guys is, we don't like Boston, we hate the Celtics here in Philadelphia. And this team, which has kind of been knocking on the door, ever since they basically had Brown and Tatum, really was pretty historical. When you look at their record, in the playoffs, and granted, they were 14 games better, 15 games better than every team in the East. And so the competition they were playing in the playoffs wasn't that great. They, landed the Dallas Mavericks in the playoffs, which wasn't any kind of all-time team either. But where do you put this team historically? Not in Boston Celtic lore, but I mean,
No.
they were pretty impressive, this run that they had through the playoffs. And although we hate the Celtics, I'll give them their due. I mean, I'm not going to put them like, the top 10 teams of all time. But I think that, this team, not only were they impressive, but also I would be scared for the next 3 or 5 years because they're not going anywhere. They can sign pretty much their top 8 players. I mean, they have their top 8 players still under contract. So this is the same team you're going to see next year. You're not losing anyone.
I think they had an easy path from the beginning. Now, listen, I think they're the best team. There's no doubt they're the best team in the NBA. They deserve the win. But if you're talking historical stuff, come on, man. You had an easy path all the way through the playoffs, right? So that right there, for me, is a negative. You even had somewhat of an easy path during the regular season, at least in the East. You want to say Embiid gets hurt every year. Okay, he does. But if he didn't, the Sixers would have been a lot tougher, for them. The Knicks had injury. The Bucks had injury. I mean, you could go up and down the East, and they pretty much had an easy path. And again, I'm not taking anything away from them. I think they're worthy of winning championship. But historically, no, I'm not there.
How many losses did they have in total this year? Like
There's like
17?
20.
18?
20 in total.
Yeah.
Chalk
They-
it
yeah.
percent.
But they had more wins in the playoffs than Detroit had all year because I think Detroit only had 15 or something season. All-time great team. No, I'm not there. But I mean, as I said in the preview, it's a very well-constructed team. They have guys they drafted. They always find a way to trade for some of these guys. And you have 4, maybe down the road 5 legitimate all-stars starting. And Horford was an all-star in the past, and he's like your 6th man. Although I don't know if his contract's up now or what, but. So they find a way to get a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, and they dump him off and bring in Drew Holiday, and they get White. So they're back to the Ainge days. They found ways to get guys in. Now, obviously, it's their first championship since 2008, but they didn't do anything wrong. I mean, look, you said it was a sleeper of a series. I slept through, I think, the 3 middle games for various reasons, but it. The 3 games in Boston, like Irving just didn't show up offensively. He had less than 20 points in all 3 of those games, and there's no way Dallas is going to win unless somebody else went off if Kyrie scored less than 20. He came to play in Dallas, and that game 3 was really the pivotal point when Doncic got tossed for the 6th foul, and they didn't have enough in the end.
They lost the series right at that moment.
Yeah. Well, they were going to come back from 0-3 anyway, but if they get game 3, then, all bets are off for sure. And they were in game 2 for a while too. But first and 5th game, they were out of it. I mean, but to me, look, styles make fights, matchups make series. Dallas got there, but it was of the top, say, 3 teams in the West, that was the best matchup for Boston. Because I think, yes, Denver lost to Minnesota. Minnesota lost to Dallas. Either of those two teams gives Boston a much tougher matchup, I think. Maybe OKC, maybe not, but because they're young and not as much experience. But Dallas, of the Final 4 in the West, Dallas was definitely the best possible matchup to get, and they made the most of it.
So you guys know what I said in the beginning of the series. I thought Dallas had a chance to maybe win in 7. And I said it's Luka and Kyrie, right? So I'm going to give you stats. So in the regular season, Luka averaged 34 a game. Kyrie averaged 26. So that's 60 points a game. And I'll move ahead to the Western Conference Finals. Pretty much same points per game. 32.4 for Luka, 27 for Kyrie. So it's almost 60 points again. In the finals, Luka averaged 29 and Kyrie averaged 20. 49 points a game. Right then and there, the series is over because the only way that they had a chance to win the series is if Luka and Kyrie won the shoes. And Boston, did their job on them. Holiday was huge. Kyrie had a terrible series, and to me, it's cut and dry. That's what happened there. That's why it was basically a sleeper of a series. So. Mika, I know you have to run. Did you want to hang for a couple of Sixers free agency thoughts, or do you want to run? It's up to you.
I give you 5 minutes here.
All right. just quickly, we're going to touch on some Sixers free agency thoughts. We'll probably get more into it next week, but moves have started to happen already. Couple of things that I saw before this. We're taping this on Thursday night before the podcast came out. Was Caruso got traded to OKC. OKC traded Giddy for Alex Caruso. That was a guy that I kind of wanted the Sixers to look at. So that's out. And then appears that they're out on Paul George, which to me is great news. So obviously the names out there are a couple of names we threw around a couple of weeks ago when we briefly spoke about this. But I'll start with Chalky. Any thoughts on what you think they're going to do versus what you want them to do, or hopefully both? So.
Well, I mean, when we talked a couple weeks ago, my prediction was they were going after George was going to be their priority, and it wasn't necessarily what I wanted them to do, but it certainly was looking that way up until this afternoon when Shams put the tweet out there. I mean, Embiid was playing footsie with him last week at the finals, and oh, look at this guy, So it seemed like, okay, this is Embiid's guy. They'll go get him, and maybe now that's out of the question. So Caruso would be one of the top trade targets if you land the big fish in free agency, which there's a limited amount of, let's just say. But and honestly, like, it's only a few hours into it, but like Chicago is getting absolutely roasted by everybody for. Not that Giddey's a bad player, but they could have gotten so much more for Caruso at the trade deadline this season, or from other teams. So they're kind of baffled as to like why he got traded for just Giddey. To me, whoever's leaking the George story, and assuming it's coming from the Sixers, I seriously, and this part of it is just hope, but I think they have to have something big lined up.
Oh yeah.
Whether that's 3 medium-sized names or 1 big name. I don't think it's going to be LeBron because I don't think he's going to leave LA. I think, I want to say maybe Butler's back in play. I don't know. Or actually, the other name too is OG.
Yeah,
he's not going to get a max from the Knicks, and the Sixers might not give him a max, but it might not take a max anymore. So if you can sign, say, OG, try and maybe get a KCP if you can talk him out of Denver. That's going to be tough. And then you have all those picks to go. You don't have to make a splash with Bridges or Markkanen necessarily right away. But the draft is next Wednesday. I will be quite surprised if the Sixers end up picking somebody that we don't already know that they're going to trade. And Morey has the ability to turn these draft day trades. So he's got, Curry, Danny Green, Milton, all draft day trades that were productive players that could start on a team that they would need, to fill a role. So I think Anunoby. I think Anunoby might be one of their targets now. And then try to figure out the rest of it with maybe you can get Anunoby and still land one of those other guys. So if you bring in Bridges and Anunoby, yeah, maybe, I don't know.
How about you, Meeker?
Yeah, I was a little disappointed, but I knew it was going to happen. That Siakam was going to re-sign with Indiana. He's getting paid some big bucks there. I'm not sure if I would have given him that contract anyway. No. But I'm with you, Chalky. Anunoby's probably the guy that I would target. And, maybe you can fill a bench piece with a Malik Monk or someone like that, or Jason likes Tyus Jones. That's not a bad play. So, yeah, I mean, Jimmy Butler, DeRozan, like these older players, not really sure that I want to try the Jimmy Butler project again.
The problem with Butler is, and I like him, is you got to
always hurt.
Well, okay, but you have to trade for him. So you're going to have to trade for him, and eventually you're going to have to pay him, right? Whereas,
so who was signing and trading for him? What do we?
Oh, you're going to have to give up picks. You're going to have to give up, I don't know, picks, I guess, because they don't really have anything to give up.
It's a minimum. You would probably need 3 first-round picks down the line.
Easily.
For Butler?
Yeah. I have a plan. And
what's your plan?
You guys know I love OG, so he would be the guy. I think the Knicks and I hope Omar's listening. He said he was going to listen. I think they're going to screw this up, the Knicks. And we could talk more about this next week. But I think OG is in play big time. And my thought was like, all right, if you sign George, I didn't want George, but obviously he's a good player. But if you sign him, you're maybe signing him and Drummond, and then that's it. And then you're gonna have to fill out, the rest of your roster. Now, if you sign OG, you're not giving him $50 million a year, right? So I think that you could do other things. Like I want them to bring back Oubre, right, at a reasonable price, and Batum will be cheap, and it sounds like he's coming back, and I would love to have him back off the bench.
And Lowry. Those two plus Lowry are rumored to be
And they'll be
pretty much
they won't,
not locks, but they're definitely like very, very good chance they all come back.
and they're not going to cost anything. Those two guys, Batum and Lowry, are not going to cost anything, right? So I think Drummond. I think you need a backup center. So there's guys out there that obviously I would like Hartenstein. I would like Valanciunas. He's another guy that would be a good player. But I'm fine with Drummond, like as the backup center. Tyus Jones, as Meeker said, I would love to have him be. He's a little too probably small to play with Maxey as a starter, but off the bench he'd be great. Trent, keep an eye on Trent Jr. because he's a guy who played with under Nurse. He fell a little bit out of favor with Toronto, so we might not have to pay as much for him. And another guy I like is Kyle Anderson, like cheap for the bench. I love the way he played in the playoffs for Minnesota. He was all over Luka for a lot of that series, and he played pretty well. He'd be a nice guy off the bench spot starter. So, but my whole point is like if you do OG, OG's good enough for me. He's good enough to be the number 3 guy on a championship team, and you're not going to be spending $40-50 million a year for him. He's younger. I mean that's my thoughts.
I mean, I think the free agent is key. Sorry, Meek. This is the last chance they're going to have a max cap space because that's going to go away. So the picks will be around for a while, but you got whatever you do in the free agency, you got to hit the home run this year, even if it's not the home run player, making the right choices because they're not going to have this money year after year. After Maxey gets his.
Yeah, this is a big year for Morey. A big off season. This is it. This is his shot.
Has there been any chatter of any of the like a bigger name guy that's just wants out, like that they can trade for?
Well, there's talk about Ingram, who I really
Yeah.
would not want. I mean, he's a good player, but he's not on the top of my list. Butler.
You need to bring another. Like if somehow you got Ingram and let's say Anunoby, I would be more comfortable with that. But I think if Ingram can't be your big star, third star player, you need guys that are almost as good to complement the fact that he gets hurt and he doesn't play defense and all that other stuff. So I wouldn't be against bringing in Ingram, but there's got to be other pieces along with that, other moves that make me feel a lot more comfortable.
I mean, the other big name other than Butler for trade is Markkanen. You guys know how much I like him. So
And he might cost the most out of all those guys we're talking about. Because Danny Ainge doesn't give guys away, so.
Especially a guy who's making what, like 15, 16 million?
Yeah.
He's even making that a year for the next 2 years, I think. So, I guess he's still in play.
Yeah, there's a name you mentioned in free agency that I didn't neglect it, but if he's willing to be a backup, I would love to bring Valanciunas in. And, Drummond's fine, but Drummond's a good regular season backup. He gets cooked year after year in the playoffs. Like, whatever reason, as the styles change, he just can't play. Now, could he have gotten a rebound in some of those games that the Sixers couldn't? Probably, but I don't think he's your long-term solution when Embiid misses games or Embiid needs those minutes in the playoffs. Valanciunas, I think, can be.
Yeah.
At least he's a little more versatile. He's not as good a rebounder, but he brings more to the table overall than Drummond does. The question is, does he want to be a backup? And that's nobody has that answer yet, so we'll have to see.
Yeah, he's good for Embiid's going to miss 15 games a year. So if like Embiid is out for 10 games, and you're starting Valanciunas, it's a lot better than starting Paul Reed or Drummond for that matter. So I agree. I just don't know how much he's going to cost. And, if you're signing these other guys, and you might not sign any of these other guys. I don't know. Maybe you have the money to sign him. I don't know. But I think he's got a plan, Maury. So I'm not concerned. I'm actually anxious to see what he's going to do. I'm kind of excited about it.
Now, one of the other names that they're kind of on pins and needles on, and not the Sixers. So this is where I think the Knicks could be looking if they let OG go. Is that if Mitchell wants out of Cleveland,
Well, that's
there's going to be teams lining up for him, and I don't know if the Sixers have the ammo, but I think the Knicks will try to bring him in.
the problem with Mitchell, and it would be the same problem here, is he needs the ball. So
Right.
like when he goes to the Knicks, I think that screws the. I hope the Knicks get him because that's going to screw them up because Brunson needs the ball. So now Mitchell's getting the ball. Now you're taking away from Brunson. I think that would happen here with Maxey, right? If Mitchell's
Yeah.
here, he needs the ball. So now Maxey, I don't know. I think that hurts Maxey.
I think Maxley can play more of a without them. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I think Maxey can shift into
But
less of a ball.
Mitchell's
player.
almost shooting as much as Embiid is in the game. So where's Maxey's shots? Like that totally I do not want Mitchell here. I think OG is a much better fit for what
The
they
hustle
need.
player, dirty player. That's the kind of guy that I would want, for this team.
You really need a second above average, if not better, defensive player to go with MB because right now they don't have it on the roster.
Yeah, and that's OG.
Yeah.
So, all right,
guys.
Meeker. I know you have to run, so we're going to thank you for joining us tonight. Be back next week. Probably talking more NBA. Probably a lot's going to go on from now until the next show. So talk some NBA, maybe some more Philly stuff. So Meeker, we will say goodnight to you, and we'll see you guys later. All right, Chalky, let's move on to a quick recap of the U.S. Open last week. Turned into a really exciting tournament at the end there with DeChambeau pulling it out. McIlroy kind of choked at the end. I know, I'll say when we did our podcast last week, and Chalky, you weren't on for that, but when we did it, I was kind of against DeChambeau. I said I didn't like this course for his game, but I will admit, I have to say, Chalky, and I wrote down the time I texted you on Friday morning. It was 9:48 a.m. on Friday morning where I said, I think DeChambeau's going to win. So I did change my mind at that point. I put some bets in on him. But we'll get to our make the cut bet, too, because that was kind of exciting. But I'll throw it to you, Chalky. What were your thoughts on the tournament? How did you do? Did you make any money?
So it was a slight loss in the end, not just for straight bets. I came out ahead in that, as Tommy said last week, I was under the weather, so that's why I wasn't on. I picked my, make the cut guy. And I had a couple bets in. Most of it was Scheffler related. And actually, it wasn't even Scheffler to win. It was Scheffler top 10, which was -2 something when I put him in. So I did a bunch of parlays that was, it was like Celtics, Panthers, Scheffler, and one or two other things. So those are all dead, which is why it's a net loss in the end because he obviously didn't finish in the top 10. But of the guys I liked, Matsuyama was a guy that I liked. I got him at 50-1. He did all right, but he wasn't up there in the last day. But I hadn't made a lot of other decisions, and DeChambeau was a guy that I hadn't made my mind up on, because just doing a lot of reading, he was a guy that a lot of people did like, and they thought he was in form. But then as I listened Thursday morning to what you guys recorded, the fact that you were against him made me stop because you're pretty good at reading this stuff. So, so I said, all right, well, I'm not gonna put anything on him. And then after you shot me that text Friday morning, I was like, not that you're stubborn, but you don't always change your mind. So if you're going to change your mind that fast on a guy that you were dead set against, who was playing well coming in, I was like, all right. So I threw some money on him at 8-1, at 9, whatever in the morning. And so that ended up being, all right for me. Definitely, couple of different exciting days, the make the cut thing. You and I were going back and forth. You'll talk about that. But on Sunday, I mean, it seems almost absurd that the guy. I mean, DeChambeau played well enough, Thursday and Saturday to be able to win that tournament because he was worst as far as hitting the fairway on Sunday.
I think he missed what
He missed
fairway?
12 or 13 or something, like almost. I think like
Yeah.
one par. It was like one or two par 4/5s. He actually hit the fairway on the
Yeah.
first shot, or whatever.
Yeah.
So you can say Rory gave it away, and there might be some truth to that. But DeChambeau made the putts, and he made par a couple times, which is what the U.S. Open used to be all about. Let's making pars at the end, and but he was in a place where he could have that bad of a day and still hang on to win, because he had played so well and given himself, that lead. And one of the strangest things I think in just watching all this is just his transformation as like this player, not just as a player, but as his personality, as his entity on the course. Because I saw him, was it, I guess almost 3 years ago. I think it was either last or next to last year. They had the Barclays Open up at Liberty National, and saw him. He was 5 feet from me coming up to, and like yeah, you're trying to focus, but the guys are acknowledging you, thank you, whatever. And people were cheering for him. He was just a year off of his first US Open at that point, and he just could not give a about anybody else. And I'll bleep that out, but that is exactly the
Wow.
way he acted. But so to watch him play, and some of those off major tournaments are ones where the fans get more engaged, like the Phoenix Open or whatever.
Yeah.
It gets crazy, but there might be a little more relaxed, a little more interactive with the crowds. But he just wasn't. And even like Koepka, who's got a face of stone, was more, he would just acknowledge, say thank you, all that kind of stuff. So to see DeChambeau having that, hole after hole, having that kind of interaction with the crowd at the US Open, to me was like one of the biggest, stories, and just his complete personality change.
I think his agent got a hold of him and said, "Listen, you're going to want to change your ways a little bit here because you're going to be hated for going to, or somewhat hated for going to live, and you're already kind of disliked. So you kind of need to, and maybe it was the live thing. Like maybe it was that move to live where, guys need to kind of be a little more personable because of the fact that they're seen as traitors or something like that. You know what I mean?"
Well, it was the right business decision.
Oh,
I'll say that. I
would-
mean,
I would do it in a
because
second.
you look at the guys that not live necessarily, but his personality, whether it's genuine or not. I mean, like, it's easy to hate a guy that doesn't interact with you or doesn't
Yeah.
show any emotion or doesn't care. It doesn't seem like as a fan you don't care. I mean, Tiger always got into it, but it just wasn't. That wasn't his personality before, and so now I think that whole thing, he's going up and down the court, they're chanting USA, I mean, he's an American. He took all that money from the Saudis, but he's an American. And Rory, and so Rory was the one of the guys that stood up for the PGA
Yeah.
and didn't go for the bag yet or whatever. And so he caught the grief of all the fans that were now like anti him. So like from 2 years ago, even, it's just a complete change of dynamics on the course and the way the crowds reacted. But it was fun to watch. And I mean, we've been texting, it's Oakmont next year. So I would certainly like to try to get out there for a day or so. Because the other thing I'll say, and I've been talking too long already, and I said this to you, shooting, whatever won the tournament at 6 was 6 under. That's fine. You don't need to have double digits for everyone. And even as 6 has been high traditionally for a US Open, that's a number I'm fine with. I'm sorry. There was the one threesome on Friday where it was Scheffler, Rory, and Xander. So your 3 best players in the world, maybe now you put DeChambeau in that conversation, and they hit beautiful shots onto the green, and they all roll off. And like, I mean, to me, that ends up putting more luck into it. And they say, well, you got to take the right angle approach, and you got to hit that. Like, the 3 best players in the world hit on what any other course would be a beautiful shot and give them a great birdie putt, and they all roll off because the greens are just sloped that way. And I mean, look, everybody had the same conditions, and it's good to see the best players in the world humbled like you and I trying to play. But to me, it's like you hit a really good shot. Like if you hit the edge and it rolls off, okay, fine. But like you're now in the center of the green, it just rolls because of the way it's sloped or the stimp was 13.5 or whatever. I mean, to me, it just took a little bit of it away from me as far as like, a low score is fine. Or, a number that's not that high in the negative is fine. But just the way that it played, it was just, and it was a little too much for me.
Well, so I want to get back to DeChambeau too at some point, but I'll keep on this topic. So if you look at the scores, and I'll give you the top 10. So DeChambeau won 6 under, McIlroy was second, 5 under, Cantlay and Finau tied for third at 4 under, Pavone was 3 under at fifth. Matsuyama, as you said, was pretty good. He was 2 under for sixth. 2 guys tied for seventh. Henley and Schauffele were 1 under. And then 3 guys tied for ninth. Burns, Thompson, and Connors were even. So, I mean, in reality, if you go back, and I would have to go back and look at the last couple of U.S. Opens, but the only one I went to was at Marion. And I believe that Rose won that at like maybe 1 under or something like that. So
He might even been +1.
it could have been +1. So, for the most part, they try to make these U.S. Open courses, pretty ridiculous. So,
And I'm fine with that. And like, look, there's guys that shot under par, so they found a way to make it work. To me, where it's like, you got to hit a good first shot, you hit a good second shot, and then like if you want to get birdie, like you really got to get it close. But if you get on the green, you're 2 putting, that's a par, that's fine. To where you're hitting in the dead center of the green or in what any other course would be a good shot, and it's just rolling off.
yeah.
Like that's too much luck. And obviously, 10 guys finished under or whatever, and so it wasn't like there was nobody that did, or like when Keimer won, he was 9 under, and 2 guys were
under,
yeah. It's just the way it seemed like there's more luck than skill, because how skilled can you beat it to nail it in such a small window with the way those greens were?
And I guess there wasn't much wind. So that
Right.
probably kind of helped the scores too. So if there's wind, maybe they are shooting what they shot at Marion. You know what I mean? So, but just to get back to DeChambeau, like I think you might even mentioned it. Like I honestly think he's no worse than your 4th best golfer right now. Like I think he's a top 4 golfer, top 5 definitely, but top 4. Obviously Scheffler and Schauffele and probably Rory, or Rory, Schauffele, Rory, however you want to put them in order. But DeChambeau to me is 4th. And I think it's a big drop-off after that, like maybe Oberg or something like that. But I think there's 4 golfers right now that are just head and shoulders better than the rest of them. And DeChambeau made himself into a really good golfer. Like he's, I was saying, oh, he's a bomber, this and that. His short game is what won this tournament. Like his putting and his his pitches and stuff, that's what won the tournament.
I mean, because, he wasn't hitting the fairways, like we said, so he was finding ways to get to the green in 3 shots or to get, he had a couple bombs. Well, I mean, look at that. Look at 18. He put it in where it was and then hit it into the bunker.
Yeah.
And then hit that bunker shot to within, almost, there, gave himself the shot to win. So I think he's at worst 5th. I don't know that there's 4 better.
Yeah, I don't know who you would put ahead of him. Oberg, maybe, or I don't know, Morikawa.
I mean, so here's the thing. Like with the live, it's a little different. So you see these guys week in and week out that play well. But I mean, for this year at least, he's the big game runner of these guys in the majors. I mean, he did well at the Masters. He was the script got flipped from the PGA, where if Xander doesn't hit that, now he's in a playoff for that, as he need to hit the one at the US. And Scheffler could have won the PGA without the nonsense, but he just couldn't get it together at all last weekend, and he was just never in the conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to get into him. Like, what the hell happened? He finished tied for 41st, +8. What happened with Scheffler?
I mean, he could have been, obviously he just barely made the cut. He could have shot plus. He could have shot +15, but he was, okay. So the flip side of the difficulty staying on the green is that you could putt like right off the green in this course and get it a lot closer and make some of these than you would in maybe other majors. So that's the trade-off, I guess, the way they design it. But so he was able to scramble and save some pars, but he really never gave himself, I don't know how many birdies he ended up having for the tournament, but it felt like he was never having a birdie putt every time excuse me. And I watched that threesome the whole way through pretty much on Friday. And, they were trying to say, well, the Memorial's a big tournament, so he's amped up after that. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I mean, look, he's had a hell of a year so far, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, he just won them, you got so amped up to win the Memorial, and then you came into the U.S. and it was flat. I mean, maybe it just didn't play to his style or whatever. Everybody has off weeks, but to be that
was bad.
that bad was, yeah. And the putter was, making him the dominant, because the putter was the last piece of the game that this year has made him so dominant. And when everything else wasn't going well, for the putter to go backwards, it just magnified everything else that was going wrong because it wasn't going to save him. And
Yeah.
I
think he made
it's an off week. Yeah, they had him, but
I think he made one putt in 4 days, basically. Like, his putting was just really bad. So you mentioned to make the cut. So you guys may know that we put this bet together for every major and then also for the players. So we hit the Players Championship. We hit that make the cut. We missed the Masters and we also missed the PGA. So for the U.S. Open, my make the cut guy was Cam Smith. Chalky was Siwoo Kim. Tommy was Bezudenhout, and then Kevin was McCarthy, and then I had the brilliant idea, and Tommy kind of also, but I was the ringleader of throwing Scheffler in, because I said, Scheffler, there's no way Scheffler's not going to make the cut, and the bet, throwing him into the parlay only increased our parlay from plus 420 to plus 450. So there were a lot of choice words being said about Scheffler throughout Friday, especially late in the day when, when he finished. I guess he finished around lunchtime and he was plus 5 and we kind of thought we were dead. But, as the day went on, they kept saying, well, the projected cut line was, even though right now it's plus 3, we think it's going to finish at plus 5. And we sweated it out.
I was thankful for the course being difficult at that point.
At that point, yeah. So we sweated it out and we came through. So we basically are going to roll our winnings through into the British Open. So that's going to be a really big make the cut bet. So Chalky, you better start studying from now.
Rory.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
I'm done.
That.
Rory.
No, we're not going to go that chalky, but
we're starting with a bigger bankroll than normal, so we don't have to be as anti-chalk.
Like, we don't like. I won't be looking for guys that are like minus 110. Like, you could give a guy that's minus 250 because we're keep that in mind when you're doing.
Yeah. Maybe Rory is the fifth guy for the juice this time around instead of Scotty or something.
Or that, yeah. So obviously we have a couple of weeks to do that. So, but all right, so that's it. I think that's all we have for today's show. So I will say some of our upcoming shows. We're gonna probably delve more into Sixers and NBA free agency next week. Then we have a couple of dead weeks for sports. So we're probably going to do a sports trivia contest in one of the first weeks of July. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be a show contest between our panel here. And then, we'll have another dead week. And then Saratoga is going to start up. So, we'll be handicapping pick 4s and pick 5s there every week. The British Open. Like we said, that's in mid-July, so that show will be coming up. We're probably going to have a fantasy football special this year. So keep an eye out for that. And then the NFL season preview, and then, we're going to get the ball rolling with the NFL by that time. So those are some of the shows coming up. I want to thank Chalky and Meeker for joining us tonight. Thank you, Giovannina's Pizza, for being our sponsor, and we will see you guys next week.
Take it easy.